Have you ever sat in silence, hoping the other person would notice you're hurting? Maybe you held back your thoughts to avoid a fight. Maybe you stayed quiet, thinking they'd understand your silence meant, "I need you." But instead, they drifted further away. It's confusing, isn't it? Because silence can mean so many things. It can be strength, it can be peace, but it can also be distance, disconnection, and sometimes the beginning of the end. In relationships, what you don't say often speaks louder than what you do. Your silence can feel like rejection, or punishment, or indifference, even when that's the last thing you intended. But here's the truth. Silence, when used with intention, can be a powerful tool for connection. The problem is, most of us use it the wrong way or at the wrong time. So in this video, we're going to explore what your silence actually says in a relationship. When is it helping? When is it hurting? And most importantly, what should you do next if your silence has already created distance between you and someone you love? Stay with me, because once you understand this, you'll never go quiet the same way again. Lesson 1. Understand the true meaning of your silence. Let's start with the most important question. Why are you silent? Seriously, pause and think about it. Because silence in a relationship isn't always the problem. It's the intention behind it that matters. You might be quiet because you're trying to stay calm, or maybe you don't know how to put your feelings into words, or maybe you're shutting down because you feel ignored, hurt, or overwhelmed. Now here's where it gets tricky. To you, silence might feel like safety, a shield, but to the other person, it often feels like a wall. A cold, invisible wall that says, "I don't trust you enough to let you in. I'm punishing you. I don't care." Of course, that might not be what you mean. But in relationships, intentions don't always match impact. Let me give you an example. Imagine your partner says something that stings. Maybe they criticize you in front of others. You feel angry and embarrassed. But instead of speaking up, you go silent. You walk away. You ignore their texts. You tell yourself, "I just need space." And maybe you do, but if you never explain that, they're left guessing. They might think you're done with them, that you've checked out, and now you're both sitting in silence, hurt, confused, and disconnected. Silence can either protect love or erode it. Here's what the Stoics would say. You don't have to react emotionally to everything. You have the power to pause. You have the strength to hold back. But holding back is only helpful if it leads to clarity, not chaos. Silence should be a space to breathe, not a way to punish. It should open the door to better communication, not slam it shut. So, how do you tell the difference? Simple, ask yourself one honest question. Am I being silent to reflect or to reject? If it's reflection, great, take your time. But at some point you need to come back and explain, even if it's just saying, "I went quiet because I didn't know how to express what I was feeling. I wasn't trying to hurt you." That one sentence can rebuild trust faster than 100 apologies. But if your silence is a form of control, a silent protest hoping you'll get the message, and then you're not helping the relationship, you're building resentment. Listen, I know it's not easy to speak up, especially when emotions are high or when you've been hurt before. But connection only grows through understanding, not assumptions. And silence, while powerful, can't do the job of words forever. Use your silence to gather strength, not as a substitute for truth. Because in the end, how you use silence might just decide whether love heals or breaks. Lesson 2. Carry yourself with quiet dignity. Now that we've talked about why you go silent, let's talk about how you carry that silence. Because let's be real, not all silence is equal. There's a big difference between going silent because you're lost and being silent because you're grounded. That's where dignity comes in. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who walk into a room and don't need to say much. There's something calm about them, something solid. They don't react to every little thing. They don't overshare. But when they do speak, It matters. That's not coldness, that's quiet confidence. And believe it or not, you can carry that energy even when you're hurt, confused, or trying to figure things out in a relationship. Let me share an example. Imagine you're dating someone who suddenly pulls away, no explanation, no warning. You feel the urge to chase them. You want to ask, did I do something wrong? What's going on? You want to text them, then delete it, then text again. Instead, you stop. You take a breath, and you choose dignified silence. You don't ghost them. You don't lash out. You simply say, I sense something's changed. I'm here if you want to talk. But I'm not going to chase clarity you're not ready to give. That's it. No drama. You're not being passive, you're being powerful. Stoicism teaches us this. We can't control what others do, but we can control how we respond. And the way you respond, especially in silence, sets the tone for how others treat you. If you treat yourself like you matter, others begin to see it too. But if your silence is filled with self-doubt, if you're shrinking instead of standing, people sense that too. Here's the key takeaway. Your silence should never be louder than your self-respect. You can be silent and still be clear. You can walk away and still be kind. You can love someone and still hold boundaries. It's not about being emotionless. It's about choosing where your emotions go and who deserves to receive them. So the next time you feel like going silent, don't ask yourself, how do I keep them? Instead, ask, how do I keep me? How do I preserve my energy, my peace, my values, without turning cold or bitter? Because here's the truth. People will forget your words. They'll forget your silence too. But they will never forget the way you carried yourself in the middle of it all. That's what quiet dignity looks like. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. Lesson 3. Speak without words. Mastering the art of silent communication. Let's talk about something that most people overlook in relationships. What you say when you say nothing at all. Nonverbal communication, your body language, your presence, your choices, often speaks louder than your voice ever could. And here's the powerful truth. Your silence is communication, whether you mean it to be or not. But the question is, what is it saying? Let me paint you a picture. You're sitting across from your partner. They're talking about something important to them. You're not interrupting, you're not arguing, you're just scrolling on your phone. Quiet, technically not saying a word. But what you're really saying is, this moment doesn't matter to me. I'm not fully here, you're alone in this. Now flip that scene, you put your phone down, you lean in slightly, you nod, make eye contact, even if you don't say much. You're still silent, but now your silence says, I'm with you. I hear you. You matter. Same silence. Completely different meaning. That's the power of presence. The Stoics believed in intentional living, and that applies here. Every action, every moment, every silence should align with your values. So when you're silent, let it mean something. Let it be calm, not cold, grounded, not distant, loving, not dismissive. Here's another example. Let's say someone you love is going through a tough time, but they're not ready to talk about it. You don't need to force a conversation. You don't need to throw advice at them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sit beside them. Say nothing. Just be there. That kind of silence, that's called emotional safety. That's where trust grows. But here's the flip side. Silence can also be used to create tension, control, or avoid accountability, like giving someone the cold shoulder or walking away mid-conversation without explanation. That kind of silence, it erodes connection. It says, I'm shutting you out. You're not worth my time. So here's the challenge. Get honest about the silence you offer. Ask yourself, is this silence building a bridge or building a wall? Am I using my presence to create closeness or confusion? And just as importantly, respect your own silence. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't owe constant access to your inner world. But when you do choose to be silent, let it reflect intentional grace, not emotional escape. Your eyes, your energy, your stillness, They all speak. Make sure they're speaking love. Make sure they're aligned with who you want to be. Because in relationships, it's not just the words that matter. It's the silence between them. That's where truth lives. That's where trust is tested. That's where connection is either broken or built. Lesson 4. Be ready to walk away, silently but powerfully. Let's talk about one of the hardest but most empowering things you can do in a relationship. Walk away. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in calm, quiet certainty that this no longer aligns with who you are. You see, silence isn't just a pause in conversation. Sometimes it's a statement, a bold one. It says, I've given what I can. I've tried to understand, to compromise, to grow, but now the most loving thing I can do is leave. That's not weakness, that's self-respect in its purest form. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who kept giving in a relationship, giving grace, giving chances, giving love, even when it wasn't returned. Every time her partner hurt her emotionally, she stayed quiet. She thought silence was strength. She thought, maybe if I don't react, they'll change. But nothing changed until one day she didn't say a word. She just left. No dramatic exit, no last argument, just silent, steady movement toward peace. And you know what? That silence spoke louder than any speech ever could. It said, I deserve better. And I'm no longer waiting for someone else to realize it. That's the kind of silence that changes lives. Now, I'm not saying you should walk away the first time something gets hard. Relationships require work, communication, patience. But there's a line, a sacred, invisible line between working on a relationship and losing yourself inside of it. The Stoics believed in accepting what we cannot control. You can't force someone to love you the way you want. You can't make someone understand your silence if they're not willing to listen. What you can do is choose your next move with clarity and courage. And sometimes that move is to walk, not to punish, not to prove a point, but to protect your inner peace. Here's how you know you're ready. You've expressed yourself with honesty, not blame. You've tried to listen, not just argue. You've stayed present, not just disappeared. And still, nothing has changed. At that point, your silence isn't avoidance, it's acceptance. It's saying, I can love you and still choose me. I can let go and still wish you well. And listen, it's going to hurt. Even the right decisions come with grief. But you'll wake up one day and realize you didn't lose anything. You returned to yourself. So if you're at a crossroads right now, wondering if staying silent is helping or harming, I want to remind you, silence is a powerful answer, especially when it's paired with action, especially when it leads you back to who you were before you began shrinking. Walk away if you need to, with grace, with strength, and without ever having to explain more than this. I'm choosing peace. Lesson 5. Set boundaries. Silently, let your actions speak. Here's something most people get wrong about boundaries. They think boundaries are about talking, about declaring them loudly, about saying, I will not accept this, or don't ever do that to me again. But real boundaries, they aren't spoken, they're lived. You don't need to say, I won't tolerate disrespect, if you walk away the moment you're being disrespected. You don't need to explain, I need space to heal, if you calmly take that space and protect it. See, boundaries become real the moment you enforce them, not when you talk about them. And often the most powerful way to do that is in silence. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're in a relationship where your partner constantly cancels plans last minute. You've told them it hurts you. They say, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. But it keeps happening. This time, you don't argue, you don't guilt trip, you don't send a long text trying to explain your disappointment. You just stop rearranging your schedule for them. You make other plans, you let your silence speak. I won't keep making space for someone who doesn't value my time. And believe me, that silence, it's louder than any confrontation. This is the kind of strength the Stoics talked about. The kind that doesn't need to scream to be heard. The kind that knows your life teaches people how to treat you, not your speeches. Now, this doesn't mean you can't express your feelings. Sometimes a simple sentence like, "That crossed a line for me," can be incredibly powerful when backed by consistent action. But here's the trap many people fall into. They say they have boundaries. Then they keep making exceptions for people who violate them. That's not compassion. That's self-abandonment. Your silence should never be passive. It should be intentional. A choice that says, "I'm no longer going to explain what should already be respected. I've said what I needed to say. Now I'll let my actions handle the rest." And here's the beauty of this approach. It creates clarity. People start to notice that you don't fight, you decide. You don't chase, you choose. And suddenly, you're no longer in relationships where you have to beg for basic respect. So if you've been repeating yourself, if you feel like people are ignoring your needs, stop trying to convince them. Show them. Let your silence create a boundary that can't be crossed quietly. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to defend your worth. Just hold the line with grace, with calm, with unwavering self-respect. Because at the end of the day, the boundaries you enforce silently will echo louder than 1,000 explanations ever could. Lesson 6. Watch what they do, not just what they say. Let's be honest for a second. Words are easy. Anyone can say "I love you." Anyone can say "I'm sorry." Anyone can promise they'll change. But the real question is, do their actions match their words? Because talk is cheap. Behavior, that's the truth. We live in a world where people know the right things to say, especially in relationships. They know how to say what you want to hear. They'll say, "You mean the world to me," and then disappear when you need them most. They'll say, "I'm going to do better," but their habits stay exactly the same. You'd remember, silence isn't just about what you don't say. It's about what you notice. The Stoics taught that wisdom comes from seeing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. So if someone's words and actions don't line up, believe the actions. Let me share a quick story. A friend of mine dated someone who was incredibly charming, always texting sweet things, sending good morning messages, telling her she was the best thing that ever happened to him. But when she was going through a hard time, a death in the family, he didn't show up. He didn't call. He didn't ask how she was doing. All those sweet words, gone. It's not that he didn't care. It's that he cared about sounding like he cared, more than actually being there. And honestly, that hurts more than silence because it makes you question what was ever real. So here's what to do. Start paying attention to the patterns, not just the highlights, but the in-between moments. Do they show up when it's inconvenient, not just when it's fun? Do they listen when you're struggling, or just wait for their turn to speak? Do they follow through on promises or offer excuses wrapped in charm? Because when someone means something, they don't just talk about it, they live it. And when they don't, your silence becomes your signal. You don't need to confront them every time. You don't need to argue or over-explain. You simply start stepping back. Quietly, respectfully, clearly. That's where your power lies. Because at the end of the day, you deserve consistency. You deserve love that's felt, not just spoken. You deserve effort that isn't performative. So if you're in a place right now where someone keeps saying all the right things, but your heart keeps whispering, something doesn't feel right, listen to that. Silence isn't just something you give. It's something you observe. And when words fall short, actions will always tell the real story. Lesson 7. Practice quiet skepticism. Don't let emotions blind you. Let's be real, falling for someone can feel magical. Everything they say sounds perfect. They make you laugh. They tell you all the right things, and suddenly you're imagining a future together after just 2 weeks. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. When you're emotionally high, your logic goes low. You stop paying attention to the gaps. You ignore the red flags. You silence your gut feeling because, well, it feels so good. But silence, when used wisely, is how you stay grounded. It gives you the space to observe instead of rush. And that's exactly what Stoic philosophy teaches us. Don't let excitement override your clarity. Let me share a quick story. A friend of mine met someone online. From day one, it was fireworks. They talked for hours, sent good morning texts, promised they were different from the rest. Within 10 days, this person was saying, "I've never felt disconnected. I can see us getting married someday." Now, for someone who had been through heartbreak, that kind of attention felt like healing, but something didn't sit right. They kept dodging real-life plans. They always had excuses when it came to meeting face-to-face. So instead of pushing harder, my friend got quiet. She didn't ghost them. She didn't accuse them. She just stopped filling in the gaps. She watched. And within a week, they disappeared. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. And that right there was the answer. Sometimes, people reveal themselves when you stop trying to complete the fantasy. When you go silent, you give space for truth to surface. This is what I call quiet skepticism. It's not negativity, it's not paranoia, it's wisdom. You can be hopeful and cautious at the same time. You can open your heart, but keep your eyes open too. Here's a question you can use whenever you feel yourself getting pulled too quickly into someone's charm. Do their actions deserve the level of emotion I'm giving them? Because if you've only known them for a short time and they're already talking about forever, pause, let silence do its job. You don't have to respond to every text right away. You don't have to mirror their intensity. You can slow it down with grace, not fear. The right person won't run from your pace. The wrong person, they'll fade when you stop feeding the fantasy. So here's a reminder. Not every connection is meant to last. Not every sweet word needs your full trust. Let time, silence, and consistency do the filtering for you. Because the people who are real, they won't rush your boundaries. They won't push past your silence. They'll meet you there with patience, honesty, and alignment. That's the kind of love that doesn't just sound good. It shows up. Lesson 8. Say no. Quietly, calmly, and without guilt. Here's a truth that might sting a little. If you never say no, your yes starts to lose meaning. And sometimes silence is the first step toward that powerful two-letter word, no. But let's be honest, saying no in relationships is hard. Especially when you care, especially when you don't want to hurt someone, especially when part of you thinks, if I say no, will they leave? So what do we do instead? We avoid. We stay silent. We say yes while feeling no. And that creates resentment. But Stoicism teaches us something radical. Saying no isn't rejection. It's self-respect. It's how we protect our time, our values, our energy. Let me give you a real-life example. A guy I know was dating someone who constantly crossed small boundaries, not in big dramatic ways, but in little dismissive behaviors. She'd make fun of his job in front of friends. She'd joke about trading up someday. And every time he'd smile politely and stay quiet. Until one day she asked him to skip an important family event because she didn't want to go alone to a party. He paused. He felt the old instinct to say okay and avoid conflict. But this time he said, "I care about you, but this doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to skip something meaningful for something casual." That moment was quiet, awkward, even, but it changed everything. Not because he yelled, not because he made her feel bad, but because finally he said no with clarity and calm. That kind of no is powerful. It doesn't push people away, it invites the right ones to step up. Here's the thing, you don't need to argue to hold a boundary. You don't need to raise your voice to stand your ground. You can simply say, "This doesn't work for me," and let that silence do the rest. And yes, not everyone will like it. Some will pull away. Some will call you selfish. Some might even leave. But here's the test. If your no, your basic self-respect, drives someone away, they weren't meant to stay. Relationships built on pressure, guilt, or fear don't last. At least not in a healthy, peaceful way. So if you've been biting your tongue, going along just to keep the peace, this is your reminder. Your silence should never cost you your voice. Speak softly but firmly. Let your no be honest, not cruel. Let it reflect your inner peace, not your fear of conflict. And remember, saying no to what drains you is saying yes to the version of you that feels whole again. You don't need a dramatic moment. You don't need a long explanation. Sometimes it's as simple as this: I'm not okay with that. And then, boundaries, peace. Lesson 9, never chase. Let your silence speak for your worth. Let's wrap up this series with one of the hardest truths to face, and one of the most freeing. You don't have to chase anyone, ever. Now, I get it. When you care about someone deeply and they start pulling away, it's natural to panic. You want to fix it. You want to know what changed. You want to do anything to bring them back. So you text again, you apologize for things that weren't your fault, you shrink yourself to seem more agreeable, and if they still stay distant, you stay quiet, but not in strength, in fear, hoping that silence will make them curious enough to come back. But here's what I want you to hear loud and clear. If silence is the only thing keeping someone curious about you, they're not showing up for the right reasons. Chasing someone through words, actions, or even silent waiting doesn't bring real love. It brings temporary attention, and it often costs you the most important thing you have, your self-worth. Let me tell you a story. A woman I know was in an on-again, off-again relationship for 2 years. Every time he distanced himself, she chased. Every time she went quiet, hoping he'd notice, he didn't. And when he did come back, it was always on his terms. One day she stopped, not out of anger, not out of bitterness. She just finally realized, I've been investing in someone who only responds when I disappear. That's not love, that's ego. So, she went silent, for real. Not to manipulate, not to get a reaction, but to reclaim her space. And that silence, it wasn't empty. It was full of dignity. It was her way of saying, I know what I bring to the table and I'm done begging someone to sit with me. That's the kind of silence that shifts everything. Because here's what the Stoics would say. You cannot control others. You can only control your actions, your responses, and your self-respect. When you stop chasing and start standing, you become magnetic. People feel that calm confidence. They respect it. And those who are right for you, they'll lean in, not run away. So if someone pulls back, let them. If they ghost you, let them go. If they can't match your energy, your honesty, your effort, let your silence be the answer. Because silence isn't just absence, it's alignment. It says, I no longer fight for space in hearts that don't make room for me. So here's your gentle reminder wherever you are in your journey. Never chase, always value. You don't have to beg for attention. You don't have to earn love through overgiving. You don't have to break yourself to hold someone else. You are enough, even when it's quiet. Especially when it's quiet. Let that silence speak your worth, and trust that the right people will hear it. If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. That tells me you're not just interested in relationships. You care about growth. You want to understand yourself more deeply. You want to love better and more wisely. We've talked a lot today about silence, how it can be misunderstood, how it can build walls or become a bridge, how it can protect or push people away. But if there's one thing I hope you take with you, it's this. Your silence has power, but only when it's intentional. Let it come from clarity, not confusion. From self-respect, not fear. From peace, not punishment. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to explain yourself over and over to be understood. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply pause, breathe, and walk in alignment with your values. Even if that means walking alone for a little while. So, wherever you are in your journey, whether you're healing, reflecting, rebuilding, or rediscovering yourself, I'm proud of you. You're doing the work most people avoid. And that's something worth honoring. This video gave you something to think about. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part resonated most? What has silence meant to you in your relationships? Feel free to leave a like if this helped. And if you want more content like this, rooted in reflection, honesty, and emotional clarity, consider subscribing. There's so much more to explore together. Until then, keep showing up for yourself. Keep choosing peace. And remember, you don't need to shout to be powerful. Your silence, when aligned with truth, is enough. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.